Welcome to the Performance Portfolio Podcast with Coop and Coop. Greg Cooper and Cooper Allen bridge the gap between performance and finance to help you build a stronger life and a more resilient future. Let's get into today's episode.
Coop, last week we were talking about owning mistakes, making corrections. At the end of the podcast, we both had to run, but you dropped a great topic that we have to follow up on this week. And I'm going to quote you here. People who say it's just water under the bridge, let's move on, but not because it's actually just water under the bridge, because they're avoiding taking accountability and taking ownership for the mistake they made or the decision they made or whatever the situation was they were involved in was, and they're trying to just frankly run away from it. So why did that pop to your head when we were having that conversation?
Great question. And this will be a fun one today because last week we talked a lot about taking personal responsibility. And a part of taking personal responsibility largely is, the reason to take accountability, the reason to take responsibility is to be able to move forward. It's to make sure we're not dwelling on the past of, hey, it happened, we can't change it, let's move forward. But just because it happened and we can't change it, doesn't mean that we can't learn from it to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I think that's the piece sometimes that people miss is they go through enough personal development that tells them, hey, let's get out of the past. Like focus on today, focus on the future. Don't worry about what's in the rear view mirror, all of that type of stuff. And I think that's very important to not dwell on the past. But I think sometimes people hear that a little too literally. And then so they hear it as not only am I going to move on from the past, but I'm never going to reflect on it. And I firmly believe that it's okay to reference the past so long as you're not living there. Because if we don't study history, it's set to repeat itself in ways over and over again. So I just was hoping that our listeners weren't expecting us to say, hey, let's just tell everybody to move on. And hey, maybe you were a total jerk for the last 30 years of your being, and now everyone's just supposed to forget about that. And you put a line in the sand and you go, hey, I'm a brand new man, and everybody just has to accept me as a brand new man. Well, no, that's not what we're saying. Yes, you could put your own personal stick in the sand and you go, you know what, starting right now, I am a brand new man. I'm going to be better. Just doesn't mean that other people have to accept you as that. And some people never will. And you have to be okay with that. It's very similar to if you were a total jerk in your relationship and you split. Let's say your wife ended up leaving you, your kids ended up leaving you. Well, if maybe you were an addict and then you got sober and now you're living this good life with this new family, or maybe you weren't an addict, you just became a better person, found a new family, and now you're living out that family. It's very unfortunate that mom and those kids didn't get the best version of their former partner and their spouse, and they only saw the crappy version, more or less, or the work in progress version, and they don't get the new one. But that doesn't mean just because you're the new, latest, greatest model, personally developed version, that these individuals over here just have to say, you know what, we're going to accept that as of now. They can forgive you. They can say water under the bridge and move on. But they can also throw up the boundary and say, you know what, you crossed a line that we're not willing to come back on. Or to a much lighter degree, you crossed a line and you still haven't taken responsibility for it. And now you're just telling us, hey, it's water under the bridge. Like I'm better now. Well, yeah, maybe you are better now, but if you haven't acknowledged what you did and how it hurt that individual or that group of people, and said, hey, here's how I'm actively changing, then you really aren't that much better because you haven't. It's the exact opposite of what we talked about last week, to your point, Greg, is there was no accountability there. So yeah, I think sometimes people just say, hey, moving forward, I'll be different, as a way to not have to apologize. It's like they know they need to apologize and it's their last ditch effort to avoid actually saying, I'm sorry, I understand how I hurt you, or I'm understanding of how I've inconvenienced you. So they just default to, well, I'll be different moving forward. Let's just move on. Let's just water under the bridge. So um, yeah, that's my kind of out loud thoughts on the topic. But do you have anything general to share, or kind of more of like a specific story, or what? When I brought that up, why did that resonate with you as well? I'm sure there's probably a couple scenarios that are a little close to home.
Yeah, I'll speak generally first because there's a few things you said that I really liked in particular, and on how people perceive you. Yeah, everybody you have crossed paths with has a version of you that they know you as. You're Jim the blank, you're Jim the blank, you're Jim the blank to all these different people. You may want everybody to see you as who you are today, especially if that's, the quote unquote best version of you, which hopefully it is, because if you have a growth mindset and you're doing the right things, you're surrounding yourself with great people. I hope that, each day you wake up feeling pretty good about the person you are, about the man you are. But nobody's squeaky clean. You have pissed people off, you have made poor decisions, you have done these things, and regardless of if you did take ownership, accountability, and apologize to that person. Now, hey, that was me. University was a different time. My values were not. I didn't even know what values meant. They might, acknowledge that, be like, appreciate it, but yeah, there's no space in you for my life, and that's okay. And you have to come to terms with that. And the other thing with brushing it under the water under the bridge, this whole topic, there's kind of two ways my brain goes about this. One, yeah, things happen, good, bad, or otherwise. Acknowledge it, take ownership of it, take accountability for it, and then move past it. You can't brush it as water under the bridge, because if you do that and pretend like everything's okay, a number of things could happen. One, history will repeat itself then because you didn't respond and react and reflect on what happened, what you did, what you didn't do. Two, people will resent that decision, especially if it was that it harmed them or in their perception, it was negative towards them. The third, and you can't rely on this, but it is a possibility, everybody will just move on. And that third one's real dangerous because people that have, oh, it's just water under the bridge, move on. And in that certain scenario, nothing happened. No negative things came back to bite them in the butt. They go, oh, I could just do that all the time, but they will get bit. It's only a matter of time. So taking that ownership, that extreme ownership, Principal Jocko Willink talks about lots, and taking that accountability is so critical. And yeah, there's lots of stories that popped in my brain, but yeah, I love this topic and I'm excited to see where this goes because I think this is going to have some great aha moments for the listeners today.
For sure. The most common one I think of that can be relatable to probably half the general public is the person who's either cheated or been cheated on. Because I firmly believe that if you've been cheated on, but then you make a decision to stay in that relationship and forgive that person, once you forgive that person and you decide to stay, that waives your right to then bring it up and complain about it ever again. You don't, if you get cheated on in January of 2026 and you forgive that person and you're still in a relationship with them and now you're in an argument about something different in September of 2026, you don't get to bring it up that like, well, no, you have to make dinner tonight because you're still working your way back into being a great spouse because you cheated on me. Like you can't use that as the weight. It's like, yes, that's something where water needs to be under the bridge, where it's okay, we're putting a pin in this, we're moving on, we're moving forward. And the flip side, though, is in saying that, if the person who cheated hears that as perfect. I get to stay with no accountability. They're gonna do it again. Whereas if that person goes, they see how much they hurt their partner. So they made a, and maybe they said it was a drunken mistake or whatever however they justified it, or they just weren't as serious about the relationship as they thought that, whatever the rationale is. If after it happens, they realize how much it hurts their partner, and they realize actually in that moment, let's say, for example, they realize, man, I actually love this person way more than I thought because seeing them this distraught and knowing that they're this distraught because of my actions really does not feel good. And I never want to make another human being feel that way ever again, especially not somebody I love. And if that person's willing to give me a second chance, I'm going to make sure that that individual is completely aware that I'm like, hey, I don't like that I made another human being feel that way, let alone you. I love you. I care about you. I know that it's wrong. I really don't feel good about it. And it's made a significant, I know I can't take back what I did, but it's made a significant enough impact that I'm going to make sure that it never happens again because it feels like shit in my shoes. So I can only imagine how it feels being in your shoes. That's a huge difference between, well, I'm glad my partner let me off the hook and it's just water under the bridge. So that was the example when I was thinking of taking accountability and then forgetting about the past. Once you've taken accountability, responsibility, and decided I'm going to stay in my relationship or my business partnership or whatever it is, then yes, past is the past, water under the bridge, move on. If you're not willing to do that, you need to sever that relationship because there's just too much baggage to move on productively. Uh, but yes, in saying that, moving on and water under the bridge does not mean, I love that you brought that up, Greg, does not mean no accountability because no accountability, no responsibility, no remorse means it's just going to happen again.
This is a great example because it automatically went to the other side of taking ownership, accountability. And I'm going to build on this because regardless of the mistake, and this is a pretty egregious mistake we're talking about here, hypothetically, right? Cheating, that's a big deal. And it shouldn't be taken lightly. And, like we talked about last week, this is definitely something you need to take personally. But then if, you know, the scenario, nope, I'm not in a place to forgive that person for what they did for me. That very well may happen. And that's a mistake that you need to accept, live with, and move on. And now the contact with that person may never happen again. Frankly, it probably won't. And that's that. In the instance where, okay, this person is, your partner or potentially your ex at the moment is willing to have that conversation and hear you out and have a constructive conversation around it. You cannot hold forgiveness in that situation. Like you said, can't be something they hold over your head forever. Every mistake you make. Oh, but that one time you cheated on me. You're not gonna do that? Or you're not gonna be, following me around like a puppy dog doing everything I say for you and blah, blah, blah. Because that creates a toxic relationship built on resentment, not on love. So yeah, that forgiveness is extremely healing for the person that did get hurt, not just for the person that did the hurting. You need to internally forgive that person for what they did. If you can do that, that creates an environment and a path forward that can rebuild certain aspects of the relationship, continue to grow other pieces of the relationship, and that on the other side, the person who was the cheater, now, okay, they've accepted what they did. They know it was wrong. They know that, no, you're the person I want to be with. They also need to continue to work. So, no, they shouldn't have to do everything at their partner's beck and call. But every day they should go, how can I be a better partner until the day we die and our relationship's over? Not because I cheated again, but because, time ran out and we passed away at, hopefully a very late age. So yeah, mistakes can be great opportunities. On that note, though, of, forgiveness is really healing, I'm also not ignorant to the fact that some things cannot be forgiven to an extent. But for anybody who has been hurt, and I'm going to say 99% of the listeners have been hurt in some sense. Even if you don't forgive that person face to face because internally you just have no space for them in your life anymore, you really don't want to talk to them, you don't want to have any path towards them again, internally forgive them so that you can move past in your own terms and move on with your life. That is the thing that people miss because there are people that live with hate in their heart and they maybe it's not always on the top of their mind, but they live with that. And when they see things or a situation happens with their friends or business associates, business partners, that hate comes out and it comes out in bad ways. They might not even realize it, but that forgiveness, even if it's only internal, and I shouldn't say even if it's only internal, is so important in moving past things. And yeah, now for the term that we're using, it is now water under the bridge, and now I can live on and go to the positive things in my future.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a perfect close to that phrase of water under the bridge because it is required. It's just not required without forgiveness and without accountability. So I'm glad we delivered, spent the extra time delivering on that point. The last thing I'll say, and it kind of transitions into a new topic, is if you're going to hold something over somebody's head that requires deep intervention or forgiveness or anything like that, the reason I use the example of cheating is because it should be that extreme. It should be lying, cheating, or stealing. Those are kind of the only three. If I take $100 from Greg, you let me stay over at your place, and I see $100 cash under the couch, and I just take it instead of telling you about it. Um, yeah, maybe not a big deal in some people's eyes, but it's still stealing, so it's a big deal. If it's cheating, it's a big deal. If I lie about you and it hurts your brand because I said something about your character that wasn't true or whatever, that's a big deal. But now we're living in this world that glorifies boundaries so hard that people are getting cut out of their lives for like very minor, either political opinions or parenting disagreements or just philosophical disagreements. And that's where I think that really just tie it back to accountability and responsibility is you need to take responsibility for your own triggers. It's yes, are there two or three or four boundaries you should probably set in your life on how people treat you and what you're willing to tolerate? For sure. But if you have 20 of them, I don't go, wow, that's a self-respecting person. I go, wow, that's a very emotionally unintelligent person who clearly cannot tolerate the world not operating exactly the way that they wish to see it. And what a brutal life that would be just living in an echo chamber with no diversity of perspective. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that diversity of perspective because I would say, as a whole, the current generations lack that. And it's this cycle of like seeing so much personal development, content, people, all this positive content, and then they flip it to be a negative thing. Not to them. Oh, it's positive to them because it's their perfect little bubble, but it's negative to everybody else because that person becomes an insufferable human. Like, here's the example I'll use. During the COVID era, I hate bringing this up, but it is relevant. Like most, I acquired some new habits because I had to fill my time. I'm an extrovert. I love people. Man, that was boring. I had my gym. Like I didn't leave the house because we were told don't do that or you're gonna go to jail. It's stupid. But I'll leave it that portion of that at that. But what did I acquire? A great routine in the morning. in my mind. It was awesome. It was like a 25-step morning process, from washing my face, water, yoga, meditation. I had um, matcha. Like I did all this stuff. And it was like an hour, 20 minutes. I'd wake up early to make sure it didn't interrupt the work I had to do. But then it got to a point where if I didn't do it, it would wreck the whole rest of my day. So it was an inherently negative thing overall. Sure, there's positive aspects of it, but I made it so that in my brain, if I didn't do one thing, or if I couldn't because I got interrupted, rest of the day shot. And yeah, I realized that when I was finally able to travel, and I was like, oh, I get into my routine. I was miserable the whole day. And I was like, what the heck? Man, I created this story in my brain that all this good, but then I made it negative if it didn't work out. So, I see a lot of that just in general observation. And, the most positive thing I would say that I took out of that time was I haven't watched consecutively 4 minutes of the news since all of that went down. Some people might say, well, that's ignorant. You don't know what's going on in the world. No, no, no. I seek out the information that I need to know that directly affects me or the people around me or the industry I'm involved in. Or, if I'm traveling a place, I'm gonna educate myself to make sure that I do the right things, talk the right things. But I bring that up in this conversation as kind of a caveat, but people need to realize that it's not all about them. And you can't create this bubble for yourself that is so fragile that the minute somebody disagrees with you or presents a challenge to you or does you wrong, screws you over, steals from you, cheats on you, lies to you, that you pop that fast. And it's
For sure.
really honestly frustrating to see how many people act like that.
That's you need to go about your day thinking about what's my responsibility to the people I'm going to encounter in the day. Not what are my rights, not how am I feeling, not how should the world cater to me emotionally. It's what's the responsibility. So if you are operating at a 3 out of 10 in a meeting that you have with me because you didn't wake up early enough to do your fancy morning routine that for some reason you need to be effective, that should not trickle over to me. That's not a me issue, that's a you issue. First of all, why do you need a 90-minute morning routine to operate at the 7 out of 10 version of you that I actually need? If that's what you need, then personally develop some more so that you don't need that. So if you want to do it, that's fine. By all means, do it. But either wake up early enough to get it done so it does not impact me or the other people you're going to encounter in the day. Um, or figure out a way to be just as effective without doing it. And I'll say that, and some people's response to that will be like, yeah, but my mental health. It's like, yes, I agree. Take care of your mental health, but do not use your mental health as an excuse to treat other people like shit or not get done what you committed to getting done. You don't show up to a meeting 15 minutes late with a cup of coffee in your hand because you needed the coffee and you're just, to use your word, an insufferable human being without one. Okay? If you're already late for the meeting, go without your coffee. It's your fault you were late. Oh, but the traffic was bad. Okay, then show up earlier. And if the traffic was bad and it threw a wrench in your day, don't go get your coffee. Like, don't make a bad scenario even worse
Yeah.
because you came across an inconvenient circumstance. You could, even if it wasn't your fault, you can still take responsibility for it and not make it even worse. So
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point, and we talked about it last time. We talk about it all the time. And it made me think, just justifying, oh, I'm gonna miss this meeting, or literally this whole week we were texting each other. I just got back from nationals in Calgary. I was playing catch up all week. Texted you, hey, what's your week look like? Busy today. Cool. I don't care what it's not about me. I don't care. And it made me think of this scene if anybody's watched Ted Lasso, where I think Ted, he had to go deal with something, a family thing, and he goes in and he's the head coach and he's like, "Hey guys, somebody has to cover practice for me. I got something to deal with." And he leaves. And Nate is sitting there. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong with everything?" And Roy's like, "I didn't ask him. It's not my business. I I gotta go too." And then he left. And then Nate's like, "Oh," and he's like freaking out because he doesn't know what they have to go deal with. But it's like, there are times if it is relevant to the person that's in, even if they're your best friend, your partner, they'll tell you. But also, there's ownership in knowing that you can't control everything and everyone around you. So if somebody says, "Hey, I'm busy, something came up," literally, I sent you that text. "Hey, something popped up this morning. We're going to have to push it back." Something did pop up this morning. Somebody I've been chasing finally got back to me. So I had to take that opportunity. I just
Well,
told
and the
you.
reality is whatever if you're a dependable enough person the majority of the time, then when stuff like that happens, the reason is irrelevant. You could have had a health emergency. You could have had a friend hit you up and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling right now. I need somebody to talk to. Can you take some time?" Uh, you could have maybe had to do something in the afternoon when you were supposed to go to the gym, and you're like, "No, it's a non-negotiable for me. I got to get this workout in. I just can't in the afternoon anymore. I got to do it in the morning." What I don't really care what the reason is if you're naturally a normally reliable and dependable person. If it's every time, and the irony of it is usually for the people where it's most times, they're the ones that give the big rationale of, "Well, I had a rash here and then a bunny came out in the road and stopped traffic." And it's like something this long. It's like I don't even want to read that. Like, just tell me you're not going to be able to make it. Hey, I'm not feeling like I don't even need that. I'm not feeling the best. It's just, hey, sorry, something came up. Gotta reschedule. If you do it three, four, five, six times in a row, then yeah, I'm probably gonna be like, hey, like, is this not a priority for you? I booked this in my calendar a few times. If it's not a priority, then I don't need to keep booking it in my calendar. Like, I'm looking for people who are looking for me here. I don't need to chase. Uh, but when it's a once in a blue moon thing, people don't question. It
Mhm.
just, hey, or you shouldn't question. Anyways, hey, sorry, brother, something came up, need to reschedule. All good. Hope everything's okay. Or, hey, I know we don't have a time yet, but next few days are going to be pretty busy. Do you mind if we connect later in the week? It just you have some healthy communication. That's sometimes when people hear communication, they think more, and more isn't always better. They'll go like you have people that'll go 2 weeks without talking to you, and then they'll just vomit on you in one day. It's like, well, how about you just occasionally check in every so often, and then when we catch up, it can be. And now I'm specifically talking more business, like client touch points or team member touch points. If we're talking 5 minutes a day, then when we're doing monthly review, pipeline review, it can be a 30-minute meeting, not a 3 hours of, well, how are the kids and how's your partner and what's been your update this month and massaging out everything that's happened. Hey, did somebody say something that you didn't like? How are you emotionally feeling? And it just you can avoid all of that if there's like day to day or week to week uh, ongoing communication. Now that's if you're listening to this and you're not in business with people, you're a solopreneur or you're an employee. That doesn't apply as much in your day-to-day relationships with friends because some of my best friends I definitely do not talk to every day. I'm talking more specifically people you are in business with. Uh, but yeah, I completely on board with what you're talking about. The last thing to kind of close it, the last thing I wrote down as you're chatting was to kind of circle it all the way back is the next person you encounter that you need to let go of the perfectionism of the past. So if somebody forgives you, but they don't want to bring the relationship back in for whatever reason, they're entitled to that opinion, and it's not your responsibility to change their opinion. You should not go work, Greg, if you lost a friend that you were friends with in university, and then a year ago you guys had a conversation personally or professionally that caused that friendship to go under. You should not spend the next 40 years of your life building your core values around how do I win that friend back. It's have your core values, but just make sure that the next person gets the best version of you. And the next person, the only way that I can get the best of Greg Cooper, because I don't know the 23-year-old version of Greg. I don't know the 15-year-old version of Greg, like some other people do. So, but the only way I can get the best version of current Greg is if you're not so focused on what the people that know 15-year-old version of you think of you. So if there's a couple of those people, relationships that you, because for me, I know I've lost some relationships that people I thought would be in my wedding party that ended up not being in my wedding party. Um, and I think the relationships were lost, some of them largely over petty reasons that if I could go back in time and change, I would. And I provide enough forgiveness and I take enough responsibility where it doesn't eat at me on a day-to-day basis. When I think about it once a year for like 30 seconds, I'm like, yeah, that kind of sucks. Would be nice if that wasn't the case. But that's the extent of it. Like, I'm not here beating myself up. I go, but because I've taken the time to forgive and forgive them, reflect on what I could have done differently. Well, that's part of now the reason that Greg, someone like yourself or someone new that's meeting me, the reason they can get the best version of me is not just because I listen to books and or read books and listen to podcasts and do personal development. It's also because the people who didn't get the best version of me, I've reflected on why they didn't get the best version of me. And in some cases, I've apologized. And in all cases, I've taken the responsibility that's needed to be taken. Um, and I think that's important for our listeners is that the next person getting the best version of you isn't just about you putting that line in the sand and reading a book and you read the let them theory and now you just let them and whatever. It's also like doing active reflection and taking ownership for your piece. And you might not even ever get the opportunity to communicate the ownership that you took to a past individual because maybe you don't speak to them anymore and you actually don't owe it to them and they don't owe it to you to get together for a coffee and have that kumbaya conversation about how you've taken ownership. I think you just owe it to yourself for your own mental health to say, I'm gonna, like you said earlier, Greg, I'm gonna mentally, internally forgive. I'm gonna internally take ownership. And because of that, I'm gonna be a healthier person. I've reflected on what I could learn. I'm not gonna make that mistake again. And the next person I encounter in my personal life or in business is going to get a better version of me as a result. So, yeah.
I'll end off with two notes. One to like the personal relationship, one to the business relationship to build off what you just said. So on the off camera, we were talking about this, where a new relationship starting or a potential new relationship starting, and those individuals may be in a different spot. And again, like we talked about lots last week, you cannot dictate what the other person thinks. You can only dictate how you carry yourself, how you present yourself, and how you show up in the best version of yourself for those people around you. And if you care about those people, whether they end up being a best friend, a friend, somebody who you just had a moment with for a period of time, or your life partner in the future, any scenario, somebody in your circle. If in your values, you know that you will go to bed with a great feeling every day, knowing that you gave everything that you could in the time available that you could give to that person, regardless of the outcome, do it. It might turn into something. Well, if it might, and that matters to you, and you feel really strongly about that person you're talking to every day, show up for them in the strongest, most passionate, most intentional way possible, if it's important to you. And if it's not, then I'll say you could just go with the flow. But frankly, for me, I'm going to show up for those people. And I said this to a friend the other day. And I would never look back at some of the relationships, whether it's a more intimate relationship or just a friendship, and go, damn, what a waste of time. That didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. I'll look back at them and go, man, what a great 3 months, or what a great, whatever duration time was. I learned a lot in that about myself, about that person, about life. That was excellent. So view those personal relationships like that. And then the challenges, the mistakes made isn't water under the bridge. It's a lesson learned that you can move forward with and become a better person for that partner that is going to be your life partner, or that person that will be your best friend, or whatever the case is. Just somebody amazing that you met with complete serendipity. So show up intentionally for people, and then big things, small things, it's not water under the bridge. It's a learning opportunity. On the business side of it, this is something new. I haven't done this before, but I was reading and I read a couple expert excerpts from Jocko's book, Leadership Strategy and Tactics. I think everybody who's in business should read this. And actually, a new version just came out. But I'm just going to read this paragraph from this section about the core tenets. Be capable and ask for help. A leader must know and understand the jobs, skills, and equipment used by the people below him or her in the chain of command. This isn't to say a leader needs to be an expert in everything. That is impossible. A platoon commander does not need to know as much about shooting as his snipers do. He can't understand the various radios as well as the radio man does. He will not know the detail of routes to and from a target like the point man will. On a construction site, the foreman won't be able to operate equipment with the same efficiency as those who operate that equipment all day long. He won't be able to lay block as well as the masons or tie rebar like the iron worker. In the manufacturing business, a plant manager might not be able to run each machine or handle every task on the line. But in all of these cases, the leader must be familiar with what goes on below him in the chain of command. And if you structure your team like that, the mistakes that get made will more often than not, if not always, I know speaking in absolutes isn't always the greatest, but if you continually build that team like that, accountability will be taken every day, extreme ownership will be taken every day, and things that used to be brushed as water under the bridge, shit happens, will then be, hey, that mistake happened because we lost sight of, I don't need to be in charge of everything. That's that guy's job. He's the expert there. I just help, assess the situation as the leader. So, frame it like that. And the water under the bridge scenarios where people are avoiding that ownership will start to disappear over time. And it'll compound into learning experiences and, some of those situations not happening ever because you're so locked in.
Why I think that framing is a perfect bow on everything that we've talked about today for the everyday listener, whether entrepreneur or employee, is that I think the reason that a lot of people don't ask for help, you mentioned be capable and ask for help. People don't ask for help. They don't assume responsibility. They don't want to take any fault or blame or anything for something because they assume that that's an indictment against their capability. And taking fault, taking responsibility, taking ownership, shouldering the blame, whatever you want to call it, for a specific thing does not mean that you're less capable. It actually is going to help you become more capable because you're going to reflect on what you could learn from a particular instance. And it sets the tone that perfect isn't the goal. Capable is the goal, and capable people know that they're not perfect. That that's not the standard. So I love that you ended it there, Greg. And I think this was an important one for people because the personal development world is so full of content that is just not long form. It's just TikTok style, 15-second here, quote with no context. And there's so many people who love quotes, but then they don't do anything with the quotes. They don't take action on them. They don't reflect on what that actually means. How can I implement this in my life? What are the nuances to it? So I think being able to do this sort of long form content and take basically a full episode reflecting on last week's episode is what allows people to go deeper on thoughts and reflect and not just take messaging and ideologies at face value. So appreciate you wanting to dig a little bit deeper with this one on me and lending your perspective on it.
Always a pleasure, Coop. We'll chat next week.
Thanks for tuning in this week. If you found value in today's episode, like, subscribe, and share it with someone in your circle so they too can build a stronger life and a more resilient future.